Hey guys, welcome to this Spain Under-21 recap video. We just got back to the hotel. Spain have just lost to Germany. They just lost 1-0 to Germany. What went wrong? It's maybe the greatest team ever.
What went right, I think, is the easier question to answer, and that would be absolutely nothing, I think, on the night. Germany, I mean, coming into it, it was obvious that they're a good unit. I've really enjoyed listening to Stefan Kuntz as well as what they've been doing on the field. I think he's a really affable guy. But it kind of just highlighted the failings of Albert Celadez. I think for me, I think this is the first time that they've come up against a team that they couldn't just blow out of the water with individual quality. And as soon as Germany got that goal ahead, they just had nothing. Celadez didn't have a plan B, didn't have anything. He was just... It seems now, looking back with hindsight, which is all very well and good, that there was no plan B because his players were carrying him. And when that didn't work due to another side being very well coached and very well organised, it all just kind of unravelled, I think.
Yeah. Because I mean, I made the point in the past about Celadez. It was against Serbia 2 years ago when they were trying to qualify for this competition in 2015, and Serbia knocked Spain out. And I thought Celadez didn't really have a plan A. So tonight, I think the way he's set up, and you do wonder how much did he plan, because there were two teams out there, but only one looked coached.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the first half, it was strange. It was really fluid, but not. I feel like nowadays fluid is something that people say almost as like a compliment, as though it's free flowing and it's modern. But it was fluid in a sense of it didn't seem organised at all. It was the midfield four. They would be arranged in any manner. It would just be players filling space. And while that's fine if everything's organised behind them, I don't think everything necessarily was organised behind them. I think that their setup was entirely compromised by the fact that other players were doing Gerard Deulofeu's running for him. I don't think Gerard Deulofeu gave Hector Bellerin any protection in the first half at all. And I think for Deulofeu to come out on El Transistor after the game and say that you can't give away a first half in a final, I think it's completely... I think he's missing the point that he was a really big factor. And for him to come out and say after the game that he's an ambitious player, that he wants to you know, probably play in the first team in the future, I think after a game like that, I don't know how he can come out and make it anything other than...
I think they gifted them two halves. I mean, he was on about the first half, but they gifted them two halves. I think if you look at it, you know, I mean, like I say, we'll maybe speak on Deulofeu a little bit more later, but you looked at the way that they approached the game as well, and I don't know, was there a bit of arrogance there, do you think, from Spain? Do you think they maybe didn't, do you think...
It's a tough one. I mean, I think that you don't know what's going on in players' minds, but maybe just the fact that they outclassed every team that they've played against in the end.
And they've had two big tests, so Portugal and Italy were the two big tests. And then tonight, they faced probably a team with really good individuals, but also a team that was coached really well. Italy, Di Biagio isn't really rated very highly at all in Italy, and Portugal, you know, I think Spain maybe gradually found them out later in the game.
Yeah, definitely. It's just really strange. I think really, even if they had a game plan, I think starting a player who isn't fit is a massive problem with that. As I mentioned before, I think Bellerin, he really struggled against both Gnabry and Weiser. It really depended on what Germany went with. They switched their wingers quite a lot. I think that they were basically, I found throughout the game, it was a problem in the first half and in the second when they were looking for a goal. I think that Dani Ceballos and Saul, they were asked to push on to help Sandro. So you almost had a front four or front five that were all challenging to try and get a first contact, or the second ball off Sandro, or the second ball off someone that was in that zone of the field. And it just left Marcos Llorente completely exposed. There was a big gap between him and the rest of his midfield. And I think Germany, with the players that they've got that are comfortable at picking up the ball, driving at pace, and had a purpose to their play, it didn't feel as though when Spain go forward and they're sort of relying on just individual ingenuity to create something, it felt more with Germany that when they got hold of the ball, that they knew what they were going to do with it, and they went about their play in a manner of a side who have a coach who wanted them to do something.
Everything about Germany was really well drilled, I thought. Yeah. You know, you looked at it and you look at them without the ball. Without the ball, their lines were perfect. The gaps were small. There was only Asensio was the only man going to receive the ball because Ceballos was playing so deep that he was laying the ball into Asensio. Now, when Asensio did pick up the ball, the lines for him to turn around, they were so fine for him to turn into. And that was the problem, and that was, again, that was brilliant from Kuntz to have the team drilled like that, because you look the way, when Germany lost the ball, the way they fell back, and they kept their lines perfect, they kept everything nice and tight, was fantastic. And then with the ball, the way they moved on the counter-attack was fantastic, it was precision. There was maybe 3 players in the counter, started the counter, but their spacing was perfect, it was all across the pitch. Now, if you looked at Spain, by the same measure, they were very tight, I thought, unless Bellerin pushed up, and in the second half he started to. But initially, and I think for large parts of the game, it was very tight. It was you had Sandro and Deulofeu, because Deulofeu started switching sides as well, didn't he? You had Sandro very narrow as well, and he didn't really have any width around him. So if Sandro picked up the ball, or anybody picked up the ball in the middle, there was no real outlet out wide. Whereas Germany, their spacing was beautiful. I thought the way they came forward.
I think it's always testament to how well a side is set up when their centre halves are protected so well that they can do the simple things well, and that's enough to look like a man of the match winner. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sandro didn't get in behind at all, and that's something that Sandro really enjoys doing.
And he's
Pollersbeck didn't have much to do in goal at all.
I can't recall anything.
There was a couple of long-range efforts which went just wide.
When Ceballos,
in terms of saves, I think he made one good save, and that was probably it, I would say.
No, I mean, the only other 2 times, I mean, when Inaki came on, that things changed then. But for me, I think when you're in a situation like this, in a game like this, where you're facing a team like Germany, very organised, they're not going to give you many inches to work within. You need a player, or a type of player with a skill set that will run at defences. And they'll maybe drag 2 or 3 players out of position, and then somebody else can go into that gap that is left. Now, Inaki tried to do that. Ceballos had 1 run, I think, tonight.
Yeah, I think it was quite hard for players like Asensio and Ceballos to kind of... They weren't allowed to turn too often, they weren't allowed to build up a head of steam really at all.
No.
And I think that's a lot down to the spacing and a lot down to... I think Germany had Spain playing in areas that they were comfortable with for quite a lot of the game. But I also think as well that the fact that Ceballos, the lack of the plan B, for example, taking off Marcos Llorente, bringing on Mayoral, for example...
we'll talk about the changes, let's go on to the changes.
For example, with that you would think, well, they're throwing an extra striker, it would be more offensive, but then they withdraw Saul to play Marcos Llorente's role as the deepest midfielder. It doesn't really make much sense.
So Saul, top scorer in the competition, one of the best players in the competition.
Reduced to being a water
Saladas after the previous game said Saul is really enjoying his new role. He's brilliant in his new role. So when you're chasing the game, you keep him in that role, right? No. You push him back, and it was incredible. He was dropping in as the 3rd centre back, and it was just remarkable.
It was crazy. It was like he wanted completely different results from just rejigging the squad around and arguably bringing worse players onto the pitch, apart from Iñaki, I think. And it was just strange. I think it made sense to bring on Jose Gaya because they wanted to stretch the game more. I thought when he came on, there was a 10-15 minute period where they started moving the ball a lot more. He got down, he was released down that flank a couple of times, put in, not the best balls, but it was a damn sight better than what Deulofeu was doing on the other side of the pitch.
But the changes were late for me. I mean, for me, that first half was that bad
that you could make 2 changes.
Yeah, completely. I mean, a reactionary coach, I think, potentially would have done that, but I don't think Saladas has got that bit between his teeth to make that change. He's definitely, I don't think he's got the balls to make that change.
Alternatively, I don't think he was brave enough to do what he needed to do. I think after 10 or 15 minutes, I noticed that Deulofeu had his right leg strapped.
He had a bit of strapping just around his calf, and we were like, what's going on? And we messaged somebody who's been inside with the Spain camp, and we said, has he picked up an injury? Like, what's going on? And they were like, maybe. And then we found out at half time of someone
he was a little bit injured when
just a little bit injured apparently, but
it was bizarre. I think that the first change that had to be made, whether it was at half time, whether it was after 60 minutes, and it never came in the entire 90 minutes, was Deulofeu not being substituted. I can completely understand. It was the last game that he's going to play for Spain Under-21s. He wants to, he will play until he physically can't run anymore, but I think it was blatantly obvious from very early on that he couldn't defensively track back. there would be times where he would drop in, and then when Spain were breaking upfield, he would be jogging along with his defenders because he couldn't.
And then in the second half, it was absurd because Bellerin was well ahead of. Bellerin was essentially. We talked about in the last, I think one of the previous podcasts about Bellerin and his role of playing almost like a right-sided striker, and he was doing this in the second half quite a lot because I think then it wasn't out of the fact that Bellerin is good in that role. It was out of the fact that he had to do it because Deulofeu couldn't do it anymore.
I think for me, Deulofeu, in his mind, you could see, well, if I have to drop back the extra 15 yards, and that means that cumulatively to go 15 yards the other way, I'm running 30 yards. And I think he was really just conscious of the fact that it would be making more work for himself if he had to keep dropping back. And then it just turned into, if the ball was there, he seemed to forget the fact he was injured for 5-10 seconds. He'd run with it, try and beat a man. Occasionally he did. I mean, he wasn't entirely useless. He did cause a few problems for their left back, but
it was just very basic problems, wasn't it? It was just running. It's what I think you'd expect.
He ran down alleys. He ran down alleys. He slowed down the play. I think the point in bringing on Jose Gaya was the fact that they wanted width. They wanted it early. They wanted somebody to put the ball in quickly. And as soon as it went out to that flank for Deulofeu, you knew that the play was going to be slowed right down. And then he didn't even compensate for that by putting a decent ball in. He didn't beat the first man very often either.
You feel bad for somebody like Oyarzabal, don't you? Like, he sat on the bench.
Well, I don't know if I feel bad for Oyarzabal, given that in the Serbia game, his big chance, he did absolutely nothing. But I feel bad. I feel bad for Iñaki, who has come on, and whenever he's come on, he's performed. He's been playing. He's been put on as a striker, and I would say, although yes, he's got the pace to stretch. Yes, he's
played a lot on the wing this year for Athletic, though.
I mean, he's played almost entirely. It's only been when Adariz has been injured that he hasn't been playing out on the right.
So I don't think he's going to be a striker personally. I can't see him being a striker in the future
at all.
He's a second striker, withdrawn, or a winger maybe.
Yeah, I think he's got really nice quick feet, which I didn't appreciate quite as much until I'd seen him more live, I think. And I think if you play him at the point of the attack, the opportunities for him to use that quick feet, I think it kind of diminishes a little because he won't have the chance to face his man as much without turning and having the space and you know. But yeah, I just, the point where I just thought that the game was beyond Spain was taking off Sandro, bringing on Iñaki, and leaving Deulofeu out. I think you'd bring on Iñaki, put him on the right hand side, leave Sandro up front. And I mean, I'm not saying that Sandro did well. I mean, Sandro was bullied. Kempf was very good. Staff was good too. I feel like
Sandro's had a tough tournament. You know, I think he's relied upon scraps because a lot of the games with Spain have gone through the midfield, and the front has almost been ignored because I mean, like when you look back on this tournament, who have been Spain's best three players out and out? So you're going to say Asensio, Ceballos, and Saul. Your midfield. Nobody's really going to talk about the attack with Spain. But Sandro's had a funny tournament because but I think he's done well. Personally, I think he's considering the situation that he's been in.
I don't think you can criticise.
He can't do any more, I don't think, than what he's done. He's scrapped, he's fought, he's held the ball up, he's laid it off. He's pinged some brilliant balls out tonight. I thought when he brings it into his body and he can hold people off really well. And I mean, potentially we'll see it in the Premier League. Could be a great asset for him in the Premier League. And then he sweeps possession out really well, and he keeps attacks going, and that was really good for him. So I think he's done that really well. So I don't want to criticise.
What I found strange though was bringing on Borja Mayoral later, and I think he's very similar to Sandro in terms of that he'll probably look to get the ball at his feet, either turn his man or get the ball wide as well.
He's more like flicks, I think. I think Mayoral likes to. I think Sandro will take an extra touch and then try and keep the ball and then look up and see where he can distribute it. Mayoral is a player, I think. The ball will come into him and he'll try and maybe like a nifty little flick, like a little 1-2, or he'll take it into his body and then lay it off, and then he'll spin. He's very much like Benzema. You know, you won't see Benzema too much, like you know, like try and spread play and hold it up and lots of people off like Sandro has done. And Mayoral is more that type of player with the flicks. So
I think what it all comes down to though is the fact that we're talking about individual attributes of players and how that could change a game, because there's no point trying to talk about how the manager could have changed it, because I don't know, there was no cohesion to anything. I didn't think. No, and I think what really, for me, when a team doesn't have any direction, I think you find whoever their holding midfielder is looks completely out of their depth. And I think tonight Marcos Llorente, yes, he was good defensively at times, but he's been the linchpin of everything good for Spain in terms of building out from the back and everything.
He started really well and then
faded.
Yeah,
and I think it is almost a sign of a team who are struggling to find their spacing, find their structure, find how they want to play, when someone who's been so vital and has been almost the water carrier from defensive midfield just goes completely missing. I think later on it got more and more desperate, because you had the likes of Mere and Vallejo. They would split really wide, and between them and Kepa they had the ball quite a lot, and they would give the ball wide to Bellerin would give it back. There was no out ball. There was nothing in deep in midfield.
Well, at the end of the game, it was basically Asensio in the middle.
It was two blocks.
Two blocks. So you had your 4 defenders, or 3 defenders at the time, and then you had your 4 attackers, and then Asensio was just moving in that gap, and he was expecting to
but when you've got one runner, and especially when it's Marco Asensio, he's not going to be going unaccompanied. So
he's a great player, but he needs association.
Yeah, I just really think that if anything, we've been able to get so excited about Spain throughout this tournament down to the individuals, and I just think this final, it showed, obviously, I think it's a trend within football in general that being very well organised and being very well drilled is the best way forward if you want a blueprint for success that will work more often than not. I think obviously it can be a cure-all, it can be a master key when you've got all these great players like Spain doing the same team, but there will be times where you just,
when they need a coach, when they
need a second plan, and maybe when perhaps you don't even need all of these star players, but you need a competent group of players who can execute a certain game plan. And I think tonight it just got completely found out that Spain, they had a general idea of playing in terms of that they would rely on these midfielders, they would like their wing backs to get high, but outside of that, I think Saladez had very little control about what would actually happen on that
pitch. And those
pitch.
things are very basics as well. They're really basic, and those things. The wing backs was a given. That's been done before. And then you look at everything else with what he's in. I mean, people saying, "Oh, he gave them freedom to play." I mean, come on, you give these players freedom. You're not going to you're not going to restrict somebody like Marco. You're not going to restrict somebody like Marco Asensio and say, "Oh, track back, please. You need to do this. You need to dig in like this." You do give them freedom, but anybody would. I think any coach would have come in. But I think you get the feeling about the players as well, and you do wonder how much they look up to him and how much to Saladez. Because Lopetegui was such a great coach, the last Under-21 coach, he was such a fantastic coach, and obviously he's the main man now, and you do wonder, where would Saladez go after?
I think in that situation tonight, I think as a player you'd be looking to the bench and you'd be waiting for the instructions.
Yeah, of course. I think they did. I think they did need the young players as well. I mean, the excellent players, but they are very young players.
I think when you've got when you're an Under-21 coach, you can't allow any player to act in a manner that is bigger than the squad.
Imagine as well if you're a guy like Saul at club level,
and you've got someone like
Simeone. You've got someone like everything is so meticulous. Every single detail from your diet right up to everything to the game on the day, and then to come away potentially with this where it feels like a bit.
And to play for a coach who isn't prepared to substitute someone who is clearly just not fit to play.
It is
bizarre, because obviously you can look at it from a point of view where Deulofeu, I think if Deulofeu was not captain, it's completely down to Saladez to think when he should be brought off. As it is, I think it's probably 80% Saladez to think I need to make a strong decision here. I'm taking my captain off. I don't care. He can't offer me. It's his last game. It's his swan song. Whatever. I don't think there's room for sentiment when it's a final. It wasn't the final group game. There wasn't nothing riding on it. Everything was riding on it. And I'm sure that Deulofeu would rather have gone off injured and still won the trophy in his final game. And if he wouldn't be happy with that, he's not got the right temperament to be a team player. In which case, who cares what he thinks? And I just think that with Deulofeu having the captain's armband, I said it would be 80% Saladez. I think 20% he's got to think as a captain for the collective good. He's got to know when he can't make the sprints that he can normally make. He's got to know when he can't move like he can normally move. He will know that he hasn't had a good game. He hasn't had a good tournament. Every press conference, people have been asking him what. They've not said you've been playing badly. Explain why. They've said how do you think it's going? And I think it's hoping to coax out of him that he's not been great, and he knows he's not been great, but he's working on it. And I just think it's come to the end of a tournament, and it could have been a tournament which really propelled him to the next level. And you were thinking, right, now he's ready.
That's where it should have been, really.
He's had the captaincy.
It is.
He's proven, and it's not. It's gone backwards. If anything.
Because it's funny, because I mean, obviously the Barcelona move has been announced, yesterday now, as we're past midnight now. You know, so his move to Barcelona has been announced. Yeah. This tournament should have been right. Okay, Deulofeu is ready for that move. You know, this is where you're meant to kick on. I mean, last time Spain won this, the guys like Thiago and Isco, everybody was looking at them and saying, right, they're ready to go now. You know, they're ready to go to the full team now.
It's bizarre. He's been in this Under-21 team. He's their record appearance holder, and he still doesn't look ready to fly the nest. It's bizarre.
For me, he still looks like somebody. For me, Deulofeu looks like somebody who has just come up to the Under-21 team from the Under-19 team, and needs to learn how to play at Under-21 level, and that, which is staggering. Yeah. Considering he's the record appearance maker, record goal scorer as well. And this is the situation that he finds himself in as a player.
I mean, it's a shame almost as much as anything else.
Oh yeah,
you
it's
must feel
definitely
sorry
a shame.
for him. It's not to slate him and
no, I remember watching him. But again, I remember watching him at under-17 and under-19 level, and I was thinking he looks fantastic. But it was at that level. So at that level, you enjoy a player, okay? But you can't keep enjoying him when he stays at that level. So when he goes up to the next level, but he's still playing like an under-19 player, you kind of like, all right, this was good at that level, but now it's kind of like, this is a little bit tedious. You need to show me a bit more. You need to show me that your game has been shaped. You know, Saul looks a completely different player to the one that I saw in the Under-19 championship. Vallejo as well, and there's a few others as well. Murray has progressed as well, and you see progression in a lot of players, but you don't see any progression. I don't see personally on the field. Off the field, we've seen a lot of progression in the field. I think he speaks a lot better in press conferences. I think he seems very more confident. He's aware of himself a lot better. On the field, not at all.
It is just strange, and I think it was really. I think it's almost just been the narrative of the tournament. It should have been the narrative that this was a brilliant golden generation almost, that should have obviously they've outclassed a lot of teams on the way to the final. I think they definitely had enough quality. If they were coached well, I think it would have been a much more exciting game rather than ending up lamenting what could have been. And I really do think that the lasting legacy of this competition now, when it should be the fact that, you know, Dani Ceballos has been really good, he won best player of the tournament. When you've got players like Saul, you've got players like Marcos Asensio scoring a lot of goals, getting both the Golden Boot and second top scorer. Instead, it's just kind of about Saladez's incompetence.
What a shame though. This was meant to be their moment, sort of thing. You do feel. It's going to be interesting to see as well what the group, what the German group, what they go on to do as well. It'll be interesting to see the parallels between the two generations as time goes on. You know, I mean, Germany's won this competition, Spain are runners up. But it'll be interesting to see from that German group as well, like how far some of them.
And you still can't take away the fact that Spain, in general, obviously this is a disappointment, but winning a youth championship isn't the most important thing. Of course, it would be nice. It would have been celebrations. It would have reinforced everything that they'd done well over the last month. But at the same time, you never know. It could give some of these players the extra kick that they need. Players will react to this in different ways, and just because you lose a youth championship, it doesn't mean that the whole federation in general is doing badly with its youth development. They've created a brilliant squad, and it's just a shame that they fall at the final hurdle.